Hey Adam, so it's great to have you on the show. I've been seeing you a lot around LinkedIn lately. You've been talking about growth to 1 billion. I know that you started bootstrapping to 14 million ARR, which is not something you see every day. Can you introduce yourself? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, my name's Adam Robinson. Like you said, I'm a SaaS founder. I just launched my third SaaS. My second one is now at 22 million ARR bootstrap, which is called retention.com. The third one's called RB2B, launched it 12 and a half weeks ago. It's now at 675K ARR, which is not bad for 12 weeks. And I make a lot of content about all this stuff on LinkedIn, which is probably why I'm here. So I love talking about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. 5 years ago, when I was at 3 million ARR, I would have absolutely killed to have the type of content that I'm making, which is why I'm doing it. I'm trying to give other founders, you know, uh, I don't think copying works, but I think that you can get a lot of inspiration from looking at what people ahead of you are doing and trying to understand why they're doing it.
It's almost like learning from seniors, right? Like when they're 7 years old, they've seen a lot of shit, right? So
Yeah, a little like that. Exactly.
cool. So how about if you go a little bit into your background? How did you get started with these companies? And maybe talking a little bit about what didn't work before this massive success.
So, um, I, in 2003, I moved to New York after college and I worked at an investment bank called Lehman Brothers and I traded credit default swaps. For people who are very young, that may not mean anything to you, but there was a big financial crisis in 2008 and credit default swaps were in the middle of it all. And Lehman Brothers was the bank that went bankrupt. So it was a really interesting place to be. When I arrived in New York, my roommates started this website called Vimeo in the apartment that I was living in. I remember day one walking into this little bedroom that they'd made an office, and on this app called Dreamweaver, which is where people made web pages in 2001 or 2002, they were creating this baby blue homepage that had a little landscape scene on it. It was cartoony and it said Vimeo. And most people know what happened after that. It became a pretty big video sharing website, second to YouTube. And I just wanted to do what they were doing my whole finance career. So I spent 10 years doing this credit default swap thing. After the financial crisis, I had saved some money and I wanted to take that money and come up with what my next life would be, in that I wanted it to be the internet, similar to Jeff Bezos. To me, it feels like it's still very early. And I thought that if I could learn how to navigate the internet, then I would be employed for a long time.
All right. So it seems like you started out with a dream and you also had a living case study right next to you that blew up, right?
It's not pretty, man. From when I decided to do that to when I actually paid myself $1 in salary, was 5 years. It just takes a really long time. I don't know what else to say. But I was also doing something that's totally different than what I was doing before. Whereas a lot of people, um, I think the best way to start a company is to do something at least kind of tangentially related to what you were doing before. If somebody was graduating college and they were like, how do I become an entrepreneur? I would say, go work at a startup in either sales, engineering, or product, get the skill, and try to pay attention to the machine and understand how the whole big picture is functioning. And then at some point, an opportunity will present itself and you will have the skills to actually capitalize on the opportunity. Whereas I had nothing. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. It's sort of hard to explain that, you know,
So you basically started from scratch. Basically, you didn't follow the advice that you're talking about now. You didn't know
yeah,
how
because
startups work.
I mean, Right. I wouldn't, I think Wall Street can like really make you overconfident. Um, if you do well, you just think you're smarter than everyone and you can do anything. And while that you can do anything, I think is largely true for smart people who can stick with things for a really, really long time. Um, I just think the understanding of what it means to actually get a business off the ground, there's no way you can know what that is like until you've been through it. And it's just harder than you could ever imagine, you know.
Got it. So at the beginning, it was 5 years until you paid yourself your first dollar, correct? So
Yeah.
what were the main points or what changed until you started getting that income?
Um, I mean, we had enough revenue to where I could actually take a salary. You know, I was paying everybody else and like plowing my own money into the thing. So what changed was we finally were making money. I don't know what else to say. We became profitable enough to where I could actually pay myself.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by the question. Like, how did you suddenly become profitable? Was it something about the way you ran the business? Was it being in the right time in the right place?
Yeah. So that business, we we figured something out that like got us to 3 million ARR. It was like a data mining and cold calling strategy. And it didn't take us past 3 million ARR, but like it took us to 3 million ARR. And at like 2 million ARR, we had enough money to where I could pay myself, but it was like it was kind of a similar sales motion as when we had like $2 of ARR. Does that make sense? Like, so what happened was we just grew the business to a point where I could actually take a salary, which a lot of early stage founders, that's kind of how it is. It's like they're not paying themselves. And then they get to the point where they can like pay themselves 50 grand. And then they get to the point where they can like pay themselves more than that or whatever, you know?
Got it. So you mentioned, I think, three businesses or three startups. Maybe you can walk me through them a little bit. Maybe for each one, how you cracked the code or what you figured out to make them successful.
um, yeah, like that's, it's, I think it's just a really hard question. There's not one thing. There's not ever a silver bullet. If you want to really understand what this game is like, YouTube search Gail Goodman, um, the slow SaaS ramp of death. This describes what it's like trying to, pay salaries with low subscription prices and, whatever. There's not one thing, but like eventually the sum of everything you're doing is sort of works, right? Like, yeah, I don't know what to say. But what I will say is my experience has, I think, made me like a very good entrepreneur now. I'm very skilled at product and marketing and getting a product off the ground and understanding, you know, how to different forces that can play off of each other to like generate awareness and create word of mouth and stuff like that. Um, I had no idea about that on my first startup. Uh, I'm really getting much more skilled at product and building the right things, and not wasting time, building too much or whatever. Our first product took a year and a half from the time we wanted to start the company to the time we launched the product. The second one took 12 weeks, right? Like it's just a night and day difference. Um, I think ultimately, yeah, I just like, That's just a really hard question. Well, what made each of them work? It's like, well, I mean, the 1,000 things that we were doing at the time we launched them sort of made them work. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I couldn't answer that a little bit better.
No, it makes sense. So if I understand what you're saying, you're basically saying that there are certain muscles that you built, and over time it just gets easier. And startups and businesses can be extremely chaotic, but when you build those muscles, it's kind of like doing those push-ups, right? It just gets a little bit easier to navigate through the chaos and focus on what's important to get to product market fit or have a good sales and marketing motion.
Yep, I think that's right.
Okay, cool. What you were saying earlier about the slow ramp of death or whatever you were saying, it reminds me of that book, um, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Maybe it's
That's
similar to that.
that's a great book about SaaS. I mean, really, so Gail Goodman she was CEO of Constant Contact. They were the first email marketing company. And in the beginning, they were getting like $15 a customer. So the slow SaaS ramp of death is just the fact that at $15 per customer, it just takes a lot of those customers to pay people's salaries, right? So it's like and small business SaaS, the nature of it is it's high churn. So just everything is hard about trying to get this machine to where, you know, it's growing and you can afford to pay salaries and marketing and like all of that stuff. The hard thing about hard things, I think, does just a good job at like, kind of like highlighting the tumultuous things that you inevitably will go through as a SaaS founder, for sure.
I think like one takeaway for me is that since you're saying that it's more about the muscle building compared to anything else, how important execution is, right? Because it's so easy to get stuck in like, oh, I'm just going to learn this today and then that and then that, and then I'm going to be ready and then I'm going to start. And once I have all this perfect knowledge, then I'm going to go ahead, right? So knowledge is important, but by what you're saying, what's more important is doing those push-ups every day.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is you just keep trying. I think experience is a much better teacher than any sort of like classes or coursework you could ever do. I think it's really helpful to listen to people who are farther along than you. But again, like you can't copy them because it just won't work. Like that's not how the world works. But yeah, you just got to go. It's
Got it.
the early stage is the hardest. I mean, it's everything is working against you when you're in the earliest stages.
Got it. So let's talk about RB2B. You said 12 weeks, right? For an insane amount of time until you became, how much was it that you mentioned?
So we're at like 675 ARR right now. Pretty quick, 3 months to get that. It's faster than any startup I've worked on before.
So can you walk me through the playbook or what exactly happened during those 12 weeks?
Yeah. So like I had been, maybe some of your audience reads my LinkedIn stuff. I had been building an audience in this target market for, I guess, like 6 months before we launched the product. Writing very specifically about my journey and sort of problems related to the technology that is tangential to what we do at RB2B. So for what we do, it's like somebody hits your website, they don't fill out a form. We resolve it to a LinkedIn profile and a business email, and we push it to Slack, and it's freemium, so it's free. It's like, it's amazing. And that in itself is like amazing. It's like, who wouldn't want that, right? Like, of course you would. There's no objection, right? So, yeah, it was kind of this thing where the LinkedIn audience just over that 6-month period, it just worked like way better than I thought it was going to. Just unimaginably so. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but at the end of the day, like I was in this position where I'd spent the last 12 months improving my skills on LinkedIn, but trying to sell to e-commerce stores, and that wasn't working. And then in September of last year, before we even decided to build this product, I decided to try to write and direct it instead of at e-commerce stores at this target market that I was going after, which are like revenue leaders of SaaS companies. So salespeople, marketers, like founders, stuff like that. And yeah, there was something about me sharing, I share stuff very openly. Like I'm willing to say things that no one else is willing to say. I'm willing to articulate pain of the journey that no one else is willing to articulate as far as I can tell. And it just really resonates with people, it seems. So that had been going on before launch. And, we'd been doing stuff like building wait lists and like whatever else, like kind of like every once in a while. So we kind of had like thousands of people lined up to use this freemium tool the day we launched, which is amazing. If you read this book, which I recommend to anybody who's early stage, this is the best book about startups, 4 Steps to the Epiphany. The idea is, most people think that the way to build a startup is you build the tech and then you launch it and then you go sell it after you launch it. It's not how it works. I mean, you can do that, but you'll probably fail. What you need to be doing is, as you are building the technology, you are finding your buyers, even without the technology. It's very hard to do, but that will reduce the risk of your startup substantially. If you're constantly talking to people who will buy this thing, and you can even get people to pay you for something that doesn't exist yet, you're heading in the right direction. If you can't get the time of day from anybody, you have potential problems. So yeah, this LinkedIn posting just gave us this unbelievable, like we talked to hundreds of people and did discovery calls while we were building this tool. And, the other part of it is like, so we do person level website visitor identity, right? There's company level website visitor identity that's ubiquitous. Clearbit, ZoomInfo, 6sense, Lead Feeder, like there's tens of vendors. I don't think there's 100, but there's a ton of them that do that. Nobody was going down to the person for basically data privacy reasons. They all are afraid of GDPR, and they sell to enterprise companies, and true enterprise companies don't really want to do this. So it was this incredible opportunity where I knew from the e-com stores that it was going to work because they could make this technology work. We sell the same thing over there. It's just instead of going to LinkedIn profile, we go to an email address. And it worked for selling $100 pairs of shoes. So like, of course it's going to work for selling $20,000 software, right? Of course it's going to fucking work. So we had a strong idea that it would be a better technology. And then the LinkedIn thing was working so well that I thought I'm obsessed with MailChimp. My first company was in the email newsletter space, and like MailChimp's execution was mind blowing. Constant Contact, which is the video that I talked about, they went public in 2009. They were 100 million ARR. MailChimp was 2 million ARR when they did this freemium move. And within 4 years, they were 100 million ARR, and they ended up getting sold for 12 times what Constant Contact did without taking $1 of external funding, which is incredible. Constant Contact was venture funded and IPO'd and all that. So I just really believe in the power of free. I think there's this idea, right? It's like, so our initial idea was here's another thing about SaaS. I think there's this sweet spot, like $1,000 to $3,000 a month, that if you can charge that and create enough value to charge that, it's just great. Cause like generally the buyers who will buy that are super smart. They're fun to work with. They it'll be easier than selling $15 subscriptions by far. And you can stack revenue really quickly. and they'll still pay on a credit card. So there's not this like purchasing thing, right? Like it's not an enterprise sale. So anyhow, I had wanted to try to hit that part of the market with this tool. The LinkedIn audience was working so well that I was like, man, if I had something that was free, then it would benefit me with this megaphone way more than it would benefit, let's say, some other startup starting from zero who didn't have this megaphone. And the free offer is so ridiculous on its own that it has embedded virality in it. You know, it won't be this way forever because nothing is forever. But like right now, if you just say what we do, people will go sign up. They'll think it's amazing and they will talk to other people about it. How it's crazy that it's free or whatever. So all of that together is how it's sort of just exploded on second one with this like somehow, you know, I had this like incredible awareness in the market already. Then we had this free offer, and then I had this incredible thing happen where I kind of like shit posted the industry leader called 6 Sense because I was kind of pissed off about something that they did. Then they sent me a cease and desist. And then I turned around and posted, instead of doing what they said, which was take the post down, apologize, and tag the commenters, I posted the cease and desist and rewrote the shit post. And that was incredible because it just spread. It was such a good piece of content that it spread awareness in the entire buyer base, potential buyer base for this, like, you know, 8 weeks in or something like that. So combination of a lot of those things is why it is where it is. We still don't really have our free to paid motion down, but like basically, you know, 1.3% of people are paying us $495 a month right now for like integrations and stuff. You know, we're going to put in a 2-touch sales motion and add some lower prices, and I think it'll go better. But yeah, that's the combination of all this stuff. And if you were like, is there any way you could have come up with this on your first venture? I would say absolutely not. I just didn't see the world in the same way. You know, like I would have told you that like influencers are stupid. Like there's no, you know what I mean? Like there's no way that someone's job should be creating this type of content. Like basically half of what I do is like this content stuff. And then I wouldn't have understood the power of free. Yeah. So that's kind of like, you know, it.
When I'm hearing this journey, to me, it's insane because, you know, it's like you're just hiking through the woods. You're all on your own. You don't know where you're going to end up. And you just learn so many things along the way. And one day, you know, you have this shield and you have this sword, and you're like, oh, I know how to fight. I've been doing this for, you know, for 10 years. And
Yeah.
now I see all these opportunities that I can make work together, and things just work because I know how to identify what to do and to play the symphony. I mixed a
Yeah.
bunch of things in there, but
It's like, yeah, it's one of those things. That's a really good illustration of it. It's like, you know, some people get very lucky very early in their careers. I think very few do, but we hear about them a lot. Everybody else, I think it takes a decade to get like very skilled and have this type of intuition, you know? Yeah, like, and another weird thing is you can't really measure what I spend all my time doing. Like you can measure the views of a LinkedIn post, but you can't measure the philosophy behind it of like I'm trying to get people to sort of feel like they're my friend, you know, and like using video and like, you know, telling more story. Like you can't, and like you can't, some niche podcast that, you know, 5 people are going to listen to, like you really can't, you know, measure that, right? Like, but I just have this belief that, you know, it's what it is a more powerful vehicle to create awareness for what I'm doing than literally anything else. me getting on a podcast from whatever angle I tell my story. If I tell it, 10 people listen to it, probably 8 of them are going to go to rb2b.com and see what it's all about. Right? Like that's just, I think that's the world we're living in.
I think it's kind of like saying, a campsite or fireside story at scale, right? So until now, you'd have a lot of really simple posts or shit posts or crap posts. And, people would measure by impression or stick their business in at top right away. And many times it just didn't work. But I think if you can tell your story in a quality way at scale or as much as possible and deeply connect with your audience, then that's what you're getting at.
And that is not as easy as it sounds. So I'm sure everyone has heard of product market fit. If you're listening to this podcast, it's the most important thing in your life. If you are a founder and, probably if you're listening to this podcast, you're not there yet. I spent many years not there. But it's kind of, once you have that, you can do everything else. Before you have that, anything else that you try to do is not going to work. I really believe in that. Meaning, if you don't have product market fit and you try to run ads, it's not going to work. If you have great product market fit and you try to run ads, it's going to speed everything up. Does that make sense? So like everything that guys like me are doing that is working, if you do not have product market fit and you tried to do these things, they would not work.
So
If you do have product
podcasting
market
would
fit,
be
what's that?
so podcasting would come after product market fit.
So like, I think audience building is a bit different because I'm just talking about like, if you don't have product market fit, then you're going to have a really hard time doing like an influencer content campaign, right? Anything that's like, whatever that like direct response, is good. Things that are incredibly long game, I think are kind of worth doing if you have a really good sense of who your target audience is, and you actually, part of the goal is to refine your skill in creating content for them. I think that that's a worthy pursuit, but yeah, everything is going to be really hard before you get product market fit. After you get it, everything is great. Where were we going with this, by the way? This is like a preface to something else that I was about to say, but I forgot what the other thing is.
I also forgot. I was
Yeah.
really
Never
absorbed in
mind
your
then.
story.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think earlier you were talking about validation, which is also one of the biggest challenges, right? You said like if people are willing to pay early on before you have a product, then obviously you're in a good place. But I do think that it's not always so simple. I can tell you there are startups that I'm working with um, where you already have different products and you do discovery all the time. And people say, yeah, that's a great idea. But I think it's really hard, especially if you're selling something that's pretty pricey, to get people to say, you know what, I'll pay you a lot of money up front if you build it for me. So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So like, I think you don't even have to get people to pay you a lot of money. If they're willing to pay you anything, because what you said is accurate. It's like, no one's going to tell you that you're stupid when you're on the phone with them. No, people really hate saying that ideas suck, right? Like this was a huge problem with startups and trying to validate your idea. So like, there's a couple stories that I like to reference, and these are from really, really good experienced entrepreneurs. So like, this is how someone might go about doing this, right? So there's a company called BarkBox, which is public, and I met one of the founders of BarkBox like a week after he started BarkBox. And he had just had a one-page website like put up on the internet. Met him in New York at the Soho Grand. So like they knew to start that company because there was this guy who had a Great Dane in Manhattan, and none of the dog stores had toys for big dogs because it's Manhattan and things are just small, right? Who has a Great Dane? So he's like, I got to solve this problem. He went around and walked around the dog park and was literally showed people a screenshot of a website and was like, would you pay $28 a month for 5 toys for a big dog delivered to your house? And he got 50 people in one day without even a website to pay $28 for 5 toys for big dogs. And that company is now a public company. Like, it was one of the most phenomenal sort of like, you know, ramp ups ever. So that's a great example. And it's just very different to get people to actually to swipe their credit card on a square on your iPhone than to just show them the website and be like, is this interesting to you? And have people say, yes, I'll join your waiting list or whatever. It's so different, but it's so much better of an indicator, right? There's entrepreneur number 2. His name's Wiley Sorelli. He started this company called Single Platform, and it sold to Constant Contact 18 months in for $100 million. And this guy, he's just such a brilliant sales guy. Before he built Single Platform, which basically was this thing that got restaurants' menus onto like Google and the Google listing or whatever. Before he started that, he was walking around to restaurants with a pitch deck and like literally saying like, write me a check for $300 and you can have this for a year. And then he'd get the check for $300 and he'd be like, cool, I don't have it yet. But when I do, you're going to be the first one. Right. And it's like funny and it's whatever, but like, this is the kind of thing that you need to do to reduce. It's like building software is so hard, especially for an inexperienced person. And it's like such an emotional thing in the beginning. You're like, you just left your job. You're so into this. And like, you think your idea is so good because, you know, that's just our ego or whatever. You know, and everyone's lying, basically lying to you and telling you that, you know, it's a good idea when it's probably not. Right. So, getting people to act with their wallet is like incredible validation of your idea. You don't have to get them to pay full price. If you get them to pay anything, it's a great sign. Another thing that I look for is when I'm talking to people about something, it's their initial facial expression. It's hard to not be delusional about this if you're so committed to your idea, but like you can see when someone's eyes light up about something and the things they start asking you are very different than when they don't give a shit, right? Like, it's like, when can I get that? Right? Like, if their face lights up and it's like, oh, like what? So like, here's a story about this. I, between my first startup working and my second startup working, it was stuck for 4 years. And when it was stuck, I was trying things to try to get it unstuck and they were just not working. One of the things that I tried was to try to go above MailChimp in the email marketing space, to no avail because 10 people had already done that. We just like misread the market like substantially. And to try to launch this product or like do a pre-launch, we went to this trade show in the audience that we thought that we were going to hit. And we did this activation. We like, you know, we just got a bunch of attention and, you know, had, you know, basically people running around talking to people. And after the first day, I remember being so devastated, laying in bed at night with my wife. And I was like, no one gives a shit about this. Like, they don't care. When they understand what it is we do, they glaze over because they already have a solution for it. They don't give a shit. Do not care. So, and I was devastated because I spent a year building the software, like spent 20 grand on this stunt that we did. And then, you know, I would tell them, and I had no idea how to do this yet, but I heard it was possible. I would be like, by the way, I know you don't care about what I just said, but like, what if I could get you email addresses of people that are on your website who don't fill out a form? Then all of a sudden it's like, what? Yeah, I want that, you know? So like, from that miserable experience, I got such a positive response to that one sentence that it just drove me to go figure out how to do it. And within like a year, I'd sort of figured out how to do it technically. And like, we tried to make it a feature. in the email app that we had. And then people didn't want to use the rest of our email app. They just wanted to use this identity feature, and we spun it out and connected it to everything else. And now that company's bootstrapped 23 million ARR. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't in a straight line, you know, but like I was literally getting feedback on that like way before, a year before I even understood how to do it technically, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And you said that you started with e-commerce. And then at some point, I don't know if it's a pivot or you started another company focused on SaaS. How did you decide to do that?
So the e-commerce market, I thought it was like a much larger TAM, and I thought it was going to be a much lower churn product than it ended up being. So basically it's like, I no longer think it can get to like 100 million revenue. I think it's like a grind higher, you know, and we have to move up market and do a bunch of other stuff. But like, it's not the product suite that we have is not a high growth product from here. Building other stuff for that audience versus the B2B, the B2B has so much larger of a TAM. The content works so much better. It's so much easier to sort of, yeah. The underlying characteristics of the market are superior in every way. So, what do you do when you're stuck? You either build more product. What you're probably not supposed to do is different product, different audience, which is what we did. But this guy Santosh, who's my COO, he's a B2B data guy, and he was like so convicted that the B2B path was better than the e-commerce path. But yeah, we're just building other company, they're within retention.com, but like we're building other product lines to basically continue to grow the business. We still have 50 people running retention.com. So it's not a pivot. I view a pivot more as just like, now we're doing this other thing. Everybody is. This is like, it's effectively a new startup, even though it's the same company. It's a different team, different TAM, different go-to-market motion, different technology, different website, different everything. So.
Got it. So I think we're coming to an end. I know that I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Do you have any final notes that you would like to tell founders out there?
It's a really, really hard thing, doing what we do. You just gotta keep banging your head against the wall. That's all. And eventually you will be in a better place. It's just so hard.
Got it. So thanks so much, Adam. Where can people reach out to you and learn about RB2B?
Just my LinkedIn, Adam Robinson on LinkedIn, retention.com. Check that out. I create a ton of content. And then for RB2B, just go to rb2b.com.
Cool. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you.